Luvuyo gave his life to work beneath the ground. Years of hard work, sacrifice, all for a future he hoped would be easier. When the work was done, he went back home with only what he thought he had. But what he didn't know is that something was left behind, a benefit with his name on it. Until one day, a call came through. ICTS tracing services had found him and found what was his. Because what you're owed should never be forgotten. Now Luvuyo's dignity is restored. His story complete. ICTS tracing services, the benefit you never knew about.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to EBnet.Stream for today's episode of Exec Meet and Greet. I'm joined by Raazia Ganie, who is the Executive Head of Investments at NMG and also the Vice President of the CFA Society in South Africa. And I'm looking forward to chatting to her and getting to know her a little bit better today. So welcome to EBnet.Stream, Raazia.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks very much for having me. Very happy to be here.
You're welcome. As I said, I'm looking forward to hearing your story. We have worked next to each other in the industry for quite some time. And I wonder if you could share with our listeners who are joining us today a little bit about your career story and how you ended up in investments at NMG.
Okay, might be a bit of a long-winded story, but I don't know if anyone else becomes an asset consultant on purpose. So I feel like everybody accidentally fell into it, and I don't think my story is any different. However, I mean, I think getting here was a long journey. So I studied at UCT. My dad was a very traditional kind of guy, so he didn't really see the point of women studying at all. And so it was almost a bit of a rebellious streak. I mean, I have a bit of a rebellious streak, and it was part of that rebellion that made me insist that I will study, because he had said no. It was like it almost reinforced that I absolutely had to go. Anyway, he did eventually give in to me. Maybe it's a daughter thing, I don't know. But anyway, so I ended up going to study at UCT, and I think it was probably for me like such an amazing experience. I encourage everyone to try and go to university. In my family, I was the first person to study at university. I mean, my dad was fairly successful actually as a small businessman, but and because of that, he also didn't see the point. He was like, you don't need that. But anyway, I insisted on it. He eventually said yes, and off we went. And I completed my BCom at UCT, and I actually started working at Old Mutual. I think everyone goes through the big green machine at some point. So I started off there in the investment business unit. I was there for a couple of years, and then decided that I want to try my hand at something different. And I got a job at what was called Fifth Quadrant at the time. So that was my first official, foray into investment consulting. And I was there for about 3 or 4 years. And so again, it was accidental. I mean, I remember having this interview and calling up friends of mine going, do you guys know what actuaries and consultants do? And everyone was like, we kind of know, but we don't really know how to explain it. Like nobody knew. No one had any idea what was going on. Anyway, I went for it. I was very, very lucky to get the job in the end, and I really loved working there. It was probably, I do look back fondly on it as, I think, one of the best places to have worked, just in terms of the work environment, because it was so, I don't know what the right word is, inclusive, I think, and encouraging. Like, you were learning from people who were really experienced around you. I was very young. I was going to meetings. I could do whatever. Anything I literally put my hand up to, they would say, yes, sure, try it, have a go. And it was great. So it was really an amazing learning experience. And then with, I don't even know how to explain this, but I just kind of woke up one day and decided, I want to do something more different than this. So I decided to go abroad. No job, no nothing, literally just me buying a plane ticket and getting a visa, and then moving to London, a place that I'd never been to before. Like, it's not like I knew what it was like. I had no idea. I went in the middle of summer. I remember clearly it was the 21st of December. And I arrived in London on the 22nd of December. I had left here, in the heart of summer, and got there, it was like so cold. Yeah, anyway, so I ended up in London. I looked for a job for a couple of months. Eventually, I made a very kind of purposeful decision not to work. I wanted to work in my field of study. I didn't want to go and have a stint at Lily White. So I was actually planning to go and get some actual experience. So I waited for a couple of months and found, I was doing little odd jobs, and then found a real role, which was at a place called PSolve at the time. And that was actually also another amazing role, because PSolve was actually I believe they are the pioneers in the UK for what do we call this now? Words escaping me. For implemented consulting. They were the first implemented consultant in the UK. So that was 2004 when I joined them. And they just started this implemented consulting. So I was involved with, they had guys on the ground building the systems. We were putting in data in the back end. I started off probably as a data capturer, if I'm honest with myself, but only because somebody had to put in these daily pricings, and what they were doing is they built a system where a client could actually get a daily valuation, and this was it's like a couple of decades ago. And that is pretty, that was pretty forward thinking. We're barely there even today in SA. Not that I'm trying to bring us down, but I think, that was quite, it was quite exciting. So I stayed there for a couple of years. I then went to a private advisory service. I did a short stint at a private bank. And then I joined Willis Towers Watson in the UK. And I was there for also a couple of years, and then came back home. So the interesting thing about Willis, I don't know if it's still like this. At the time, it was Watson Wyatt when I joined them. So there's quite a couple of mergers that happened in the interim, but they were known as the Oxbridge of consulting. So they were, they would hire people from Oxford and Cambridge predominantly, London Business School and these types of really prestigious universities. So it was quite exciting to get in there, actually, given that I was only from SA with a UCT degree, where, at the first instance, people were kind of going, but what is UCT? Is it even an accredited university? So, it's really hard when you are in a place where you're competing against Oxford, Cambridge, and you think you've come from the best university in SA, but actually no one cares, and they don't even recognize it.
True.
So it's a really interesting kind of dilemma that you face. But anyway, one thing that was really exciting about that for me is that you do get to a point where you kind of suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I am in the same room as all these other guys who have their first degrees from, Oxford or Cambridge, and we're competing equally, And it's quite a nice kind of feeling, especially when you come from South Africa, where,
Sure.
You have a lot of disparities here, and it's actually quite a nice, you kind of get there and you think, okay, well, I feel like I've made it in the world equally, without someone saying, oh, actually, you probably just got that because, you're the right color or whatever. So that was quite nice, actually. And that was a great experience again as well. But also, I think it probably, I kind of want to say, I feel like I'm probably can officially call myself a professional investment consultant, just given the number of years, of experience, but also at different consultancies. So I then came back to SA. I was getting quite homesick and came home eventually. And I started working at Forbes, where I was there for about just under a decade, really, just about 10 years, and then joined NMG. So that's how I find myself where I am today. It's just been, what am I now, 5 years, I think, at NMG. It's flown by. But yeah, so yeah, it's quite a long journey. And I was doing my CFA in between all of this. So I kind of did a bit of it. I think I had level 1 when I left here, and then completed it when I got to the UK. But really interestingly, like I was saying, they didn't recognize UCT, but they did recognize the CFA. And so I must say, I consider that to be a genuine passport globally. Like if you have any level, they will recognize it, So it's very easy to be able to go and just go, okay, well, you don't recognize my uni, but I also have level 1 already. And that is global and it's recognized, and the standard is the same everywhere. And that makes such a big difference, actually.
Reflecting on your journey, which is a quite a colorful one. I've kind of picked out a couple of nuggets or advice that perhaps you didn't mean to give, but you have. And the first is that you are rebellious.
I don't know if that's advice, but maybe a bit of insight.
It is an interesting kind of word that you chose there. And before we get into the other kind of nuggets that I grabbed there, it must have been difficult to have a parent say to you, we don't think this is necessary or right for you to do, and you kind of standing your ground. I mean, I don't know if you have kids, perhaps you'd like to share that.
I do, yes.
And is education important to you, having reflected and having experienced what you have?
Extremely important. I think it's probably one of the, in my mind, if the South African government had focused on education 32 years ago, I think we would be in a very, very different position right now. So education for me is imperative. So I do have kids. I've got 2 girls. They are 10 and 13 at the moment. And I guess because they're girls, I obviously strongly encourage everything for them to do whatever their heart desires.
Just to tap into that, because we live in a world of AI, and I don't want to go down the road of, hey, let's have an AI conversation, because that's been beaten to death. But we do live in this world of AI. So what would you encourage your 10 and your 13-year-old to study? Is it a case of follow your passion, follow your dreams? For the youngsters listening to this, what piece of advice would you give them?
It's really not an easy decision these days. And I think you're right. AI, I think there's going to be a couple of years down the line where a few jobs are just not going to exist anymore. So I do think there are things that we know computers can't do. And we need to be focusing on those things. Like, as smart as what AI is, and although it speaks as though it has feelings, the fact is it doesn't have feelings. And so we need to focus. I think it's a lot of the soft skills are very important. Being able to really connect with people, being able to understand them, having that empathy. I think it's so important. And I think those are the things that's going to be important going forward. And also the way we think about things, you need to be able to be, I suppose it's pragmatic. We want to be practical, but you want to be strategic and be able to really focus in on ideas, and, those types of things are important. And then I suppose a level of creativity, right, that you kind of mix into your solutions, if you will. I think. So, yeah, it's hard. My kids have jumped around in terms of where they want to be and what they're going to be. They're still quite young. One of them has decided they want to become a doctor, which is quite exciting for me, because I'm like, okay, that's great. And mom doesn't have to think about that anymore. So, and I think that's the kind of thing, it's probably very likely to exist right up into, eternity, because I don't know if a lot of people, especially in our generation, maybe it'll come, but I think there's still a lot of people that are not yet quite comfortable to have a robot diagnosing the illness.
EBnet is proud to bring you top quality content from experts across the financial services industry in South Africa and internationally, all for free. Your support helps us in doing this. All we ask is that you subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below, share this video with others you think will benefit from it, and give us a thumbs up if you are enjoying the content. That way, you help us help you. Thank you from the team at EBnet. For more great content, please visit www.ebnet.co.za.
Well, there certainly are a lot of people having, who are comfortable to have a robot diagnose their financial wellness. So but for me, it's just a matter of time. But I want to zone in on another one of those nuggets. And you said that you felt included, or that you had earned your seat at the table when you were describing your work in the UK. And you mentioned colour. But I can gather as a woman as well that there must have been some of that as well. And perhaps for the young ladies watching this, perhaps you can share a little bit more about what you meant by that, and how you see, if at all, the world changing around this.
Do you know, I think one of the big benefits of working in the UK is that they do see things. They have that natural British diplomacy, which we don't really have in South Africa. And I think it really helps you, in the way that they deal with things. Like, everything is far softer, if you will. And I think that is quite nice. It's a nice way to be, because even if you're giving bad news, you can give it in a way that somebody understands. Look, it's not something personal for them. These are the things that are happening around you, and this is the reason for the decision. And it's actually so much easier than how we sometimes deal with things, which is very rough and ready, in the way that we do things. And I think I found that extremely helpful to me. Even now, I try really, it's not a natural instinct for me, but I try really hard to bring that in, just to have that empathy with a situation, with anybody. And also, you try really hard not to be very personal about people. So I think, for me, it was really, they are already thinking about these things. They're far ahead of us in terms of those, like gender equality and all of those things. They've been thinking about it. I left there 15 years ago, and I was there for about 8 years. So it's like, 20-something years ago that all of this started. So the thing is, they've been thinking about it a long time, a far longer time than we have. So you didn't find as many issues, like there were women at every level. I feel like there was a woman running Willis at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So, and even on our floor, we had women. I think the head of research was a woman. There was women everywhere, and it was amazing to see. So from a gender equality perspective, that also gave me more insight into, listen, we can do everything, like we're doing it, And so it was, you do need that. People often saying, look, people kind of need to see, they look up and see people that they can relate to. And I think that's true. Just to give you that, I think especially also coming from where we come from, you're very isolated, you're like protected in your little microcosm, and then you suddenly go into the whole world, and it's a really useful experience just to get there and go, okay, this is how it works. Actually, we're all the same. It's just about what you put in,
Yeah.
And
I've just finished reading Susie Wolf's autobiography called Driven, and she writes about how little girls used to see her. She was a very successful racing driver herself. Now, she's known as Toto Wolff's wife, but actually she was more successful than him in her racing career. And she writes about the importance of women having a role model, or seeing somebody else do something that inspires them, or almost gives them permission.
Yes.
And you talk about this with such passion. How important is it to you as a leader in our industry and in the asset consulting world that you are kind of busy chatting to us about? How important is this for us as women? Does it still exist as an issue, or is kind of gender equality there or thereabouts, and we're moving on to other conversations?
Look, I think in SA we still have a long way to go. If I think about it from our CFA perspective, I mean, we've done a lot to strongly encourage more females into our industry. So our Day of the Girl program talks about that, and I'll talk a bit about it. But I think we still have a long way to go. So if I think about the stats off the top of my head, I'm going to say we have about a 70-30 split, 70% men, 30% women of CFAs in South Africa. So that's quite a big, gap that still needs to be closed. I'm going to stand under correction with those numbers, but it is a big gap. And so we've really been working quite hard. So the Day of the Girl program, which was an idea that I had, and then our Women in Investment Committee kind of put it together. In fact, it was Delphine Govender who had this, she's amazing at these types of things, but she kind of branded it so that we could, have a concept that we could actually go out there with. And basically what it is the CFA stands as a middleman who's joining schools and kids who kind of need to do some sort of job shadowing, and then companies who then see these children. But we're focusing on the girls. So it's basically girls from around grade 10 and 11, where they, about to kind of make their career choices. And we're trying to make sure that they are fully aware that the CFA exists, that, there are these careers. We talk to them about all the vast careers you can have as a CFA charter holder, how broad it is. And the thing is, we believe we've made a lot of progress on this. It started in about 2021. And in that year, because of COVID, we did it virtually. And then from 2022, we started physically going out, getting the girls to come. And it's actually a much bigger mission than one would expect, because schools may not have heard of the CFA. Yeah. So you need to convince them that this is a legitimate organization and your kids will be safe, right? And then companies in the first instance might have been quite reluctant, because they're kind of going, well, what is this? How many of these girl kids must we have at school? But actually, it started off, a bit of wobbly ground and kind of having to convince people. But these days, it is so successful. We actually have people calling us on any given year saying, listen, what's happened, because we haven't seen anything, and are we still included or not? Because that's a real thing now. Like everybody wants to be involved. And we found that both the girls and the companies actually benefit from this. It's not just the girls, and the idea was to kind of target underprivileged girls who won't have an uncle or aunt who could just take them to work. Yeah. And I think we've actually managed to, get quite a large amount of that contingent that we were targeting. And the idea is we kind of want to measure, in 5 or 10 years' time, what that 70-30 gap is. And if it's closed, because I think, I think our Women in Investment Committee is going to take full credit for that gap closing in a couple of years.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant initiative. Yeah. And kudos to you. It's important to see, and it's just nice to see that conversation happening in a very, very constructive way. To give girls exposure to kind of real life jobs and work and accreditations. Raazia, as an individual, I'm going to ask you an on-the-spot question. Describe yourself using one word.
Oh, I'm going to go bubbly. That's I've been told that for a long time, literally since my very first job. In fact, I think they said you could be more bubbly. And I was like, really? Could I? So
is that how your children would know you?
No, they're probably going to go. They'll go the opposite, probably. There's 2 parents and one has to be the strict one, and unfortunately, that's had to be me. So, yeah. Yes, so I think I'll stick with bubbly, but only because I mean I don't actually see myself like that. I think I'm an introvert, but most people look
Okay.
at me and they go, "We don't see that about you at all." But apparently that's how sometimes one ends up, right? Like you can be extroverted up to a point where your energy is completely drained, and then you just need to recharge. Um,
My kids use the word omnivert. I don't know if that's a thing,
oh, I like
but
it.
it sounds like one. So yes, you're welcome to it. Just between
Thank
us, of
you.
course.
And all
I
the
think
streamers.
um, when we chat and have these exec encounters or exec meet and greets with individuals like yourselves, we try and kind of encourage the next generation. And you're such a role model for women. You describe yourself as bubbly, which can sometimes be a stumbling block or a challenge in the boardroom.
Yeah.
You talk about education and you're so passionate about it. Do you have any other pieces of advice for youngsters watching this, who may be thinking of joining the financial sector or the financial services industry? They may even be thinking of leaving the country. I mean, what would you share with them right now?
Um, because I've had a stint abroad, I think it's so important for South Africans to see the world in some way or form. Um, and I don't want to, encourage our brain drain, but I think
Mm.
it actually is so beneficial. And I find South Africans always come home, there's just no place in the world like ours. But it's so important for people to go out there, especially our people, to go out there and see how the world works. Because I think it works differently to, we're kind of getting there now, but
Mhm.
it's different if you just go out somewhere and you see how everything works differently and realize actually, I'm just a person here and I can do all of this,
Mm.
and all of that depends on me. I actually have control over it. It's not someone else controlling my fate. And so I think it's important for people to get out there and see that. Sometimes it's just through travel, sometimes it's through working abroad. It's a very useful experience. Education for me is second to none. But I mean, I don't want to discourage people from being entrepreneurs. If you've got a great idea that you firmly believe in, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Because I think we've got really smart people around us and they've got great ideas. And sometimes it's just a bit of encouragement that they actually need to get out there and do it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think education's important, but it shouldn't be the thing that actually hinders you from, implementing your
Mhm.
great idea because you first need to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, I think we have thousands of examples with, Steve Jobs and all sorts of people who, did lots of amazing things out of the parents' garage. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we have a lot of room for entrepreneurs. Um, yeah, I think for people wanting to study and do things, the fact is there's no substitute for hard work when it comes to these things. You
Mhm.
have to put in the work. Some of us, some people are much smarter than others. Maybe it comes easier to them, great, but we still have to do something. Maybe the smart stuff comes easier to them, but the social things are harder. So then they've got to put it in on the other side,
Mhm.
and the fact is you just need to find your way, find your balance, and then you go with it.
Mm.
Um,
It's such a valid point. I mean, this weekend past, we just all watched Wimbledon, and we watched these. I mean, it was gladiatorial. The men's final, they were just hitting these balls with such speed and such
yeah,
force, and
yeah,
it's easy to kind of sit back and go, oh, look how talented they are. But I think what we don't understand or what we don't appreciate perhaps is how much hard work, how many tennis balls had to be hit, how often, even when you don't feel like it, you're out there hitting
absolutely,
tennis balls. And
absolutely.
I think it's a good lesson for life. You talk about
Yes,
hard work,
yes,
and
yes.
yeah, hard work beats talent, right?
I think it was a quote I saw from Novak Djokovic, who apparently wanted to spoil himself after winning some game or some match or some tournament, and then allowed himself like one bar of chocolate, like one block, one tiny block. And I keep thinking, like, whenever I think about that, I think like,
Yeah.
like just the sheer discipline that they've got
Yeah.
relative to us as regular human beings, maybe we're smarter in some areas, but we may not have that level of discipline to be able to do those things.
That's it.
And, it's everybody's talents lie, elsewhere, it's not all the same thing. But yeah, they've worked really hard. I definitely don't think we realize it, especially like I'm trying to be healthier about myself as I move into, a new decade. And like, I know, it's scary, right? But the thing is, like, you realize, like, we're not, as a regular person, you're just not as disciplined, as what you would like to be. It's actually very hard to force yourself to do those things.
Yeah. And well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier as well, when you talked about the graduates from Oxford and Cambridge who you worked with. And it's definitely a kind of not a motto of mine, but a belief of mine that you will become the average of the people you spend the most amount of time with, right? So if you want to be healthy, spend time with healthy people. Or if you want to be good at asset consulting, spend time with the best asset consultants. Or, you can play that out in everything.
Yeah, that was really how I felt about my fifth quadrant days, I must say. I literally felt like I was surrounded by so many smart people that I had no choice but to actually up my own game.
Absolutely.
To stay on that level. And that's actually so true wherever you go. Like if you I wouldn't say constantly surround yourself with actuaries, because they don't have not necessarily the smartest people, and that may take a toll on your personality. But if you're surrounded by smart people, you have to, and it's so nice because it's not a chore anymore. It just happens, it's kind of through assimilation or whatever. It just happens.
Osmosis. Yeah.
Osmosis. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it just happens across the board because we're there. You just start picking it up and you start being different and your level just goes up, and it's an amazing thing. So I think it's true, your friends are important, and who you surround yourself with is very important. And yeah, even for young people, think about that. Like you may not think, oh, they're influencing me, but they may be, and it might not be positive. So if you're a young person and you do want to think about where your influences come from.
And what you're watching on TikTok, right? That's important.
Whether we can control that or not, gee whiz.
That's a conversation for another day, Raazia. We have run out of time. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I wish we could carry on, but as I say, we have run out of time, so I'm going to close it, but I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon because there are some asset consulting questions that we do need to talk about and the oil price, but we'll do that another day. Raazia, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us on EBnet.Stream today.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much.
Luvuyo gave his life to work beneath the ground. Years of hard work, sacrifice, all for a future he hoped would be easier. When the work was done, he went back home with only what he thought he had. But what he didn't know is that something was left behind, a benefit with his name on it. Until one day, a call came through. ICTS tracing services had found him and found what was his. Because what you're owed should never be forgotten. Now Luvuyo's dignity is restored. His story complete. ICTS tracing services, the benefit you never knew about.